one of the poorest and most deprived wards in the whole of the UK, you would see a very different pattern of life expectancy. And you'd have to get all the way beyond Crystal Palace, having crossed all of London, before you would see that life expectancy starts to rise again. And you could make the same bus journey across Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Bristol, Cardiff, Swansea, any of our cities, and you would see that whole pattern. That inequality is partly about healthcare and resources, partly about housing, partly about abilities of people to develop their skills and get on in life. It is about the function of government and local government as well to invest in those communities, because everybody deserves to have the longest possible life expectancy wherever you happen to have been born. There is also a crisis of mental health within our society. 1 in 4 of us are going to go through a mental health crisis during our lifetime. 1 in 4 of us will be in a very difficult and dangerous place. Some of us will get good help and care, will get good understanding from our loved ones who would support us through this crisis. Some won't. Some will be ignored. Some young people will be frightened and afraid to talk about it. Told, your abusive words would be used towards them because of the crisis they're going through. And they'd be afraid to seek any help. And the biggest cause of death amongst young men in Britain today is suicide. Now, this is a crisis that has to be faced. It has to be faced by investment in NHS mental health services, in what are often very good, often quite small voluntary organisations that do a great deal to help people through crises. But it's also one that we've also all got to face by changing the way we approach the issue of mental health, reaching out to people that are going through a crisis, and recognising real parity of esteem means saying, yeah, we'll support you, we'll help you through the difficulties you're in, so that when you get through them, you'll be back amongst us just like you always were. Can't we treat mental health as part and parcel of our very being, as human beings? Our wonderful Shadow Health Secretary, and I will be launching a policy statement on how we're going to take the NHS forward. And there's so many other policy areas that we're going to be developing. Others, Christine particularly, and I thank her for it, has spoken a lot about education. Education for all. Education at all stages of life. All preschool children getting a chance to be socialising together, not on the basis of parental income or poverty, but on the basis of the fact they're under preschool age and they need to be socialising together and growing up together with each other. And our National Education Service will be designed to ensure that we don't commodify education, preschool or post-18. We recognise education is a right, not a privilege, and also that if somebody becomes a good nurse, a good doctor, a good engineer, a good teacher, we all benefit from it. What a waste poverty is! What a waste lack of opportunity! And an environment policy which is about sustainability, not just in Britain, but in the world as a whole. And I tell you, some of the most interesting discussions I've had about environmental sustainability, you'll be surprised when I say this, actually came from a very lengthy meeting I had with a group of steel workers in Port Talbot about how they access the energy they need to make the steel, what happens on recycling, what energy could be saved, how it could be done differently, and how it could be done in a more intelligent and more rational way. Who says people at work, often in a very difficult work environment, don't themselves have really good ideas about how we can do things differently? So, an does respect our natural world and our environment and recognises that you cannot deal with air pollution as one nation any more than you can deal with water pollution. Because if we throw rubbish off the sea in Brighton, it will end up in France. If Denmark or the Netherlands pumps foul air from its own industries, from its factories, it will end up with us when an east wind blows. I'll tell you this, there is no hiding place from pollution. There is no hiding place from destroying your environment. And so, whilst we might have good environmental sustainability regulations, we also have to try and include those in trade treaties that we make with other countries, so we don't end up exporting pollution, and we challenge the whole principles behind the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is about... So it's a world that we're looking at that's very different, but crucially, it's how we deal with the big central question of the economy. It wasn't nurses, doctors, teachers, care workers, Royal Mail delivery workers, homeless people, or any other group within our society that caused the banking crisis of 2008-9. It was caused by a lack of regulation of the banks. It was caused by the greed of the banking community. It was caused by a system that allowed it to happen. But the price has been paid through austerity, and that has hit the poorest in the poorest communities the hardest in all countries where austerity has been put forward. So I was very pleased when John McDonnell accepted the position of being Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I was really delighted. Only a few days later, John was able to explain to the Labour Party conference in quite simple terms that austerity is a political choice, not an economic necessity. You can't have your way to austerity. You have to invest your way to austerity. And John has put that forward so well and developed that whole idea that we need an economy that invests in the infrastructure we need, invests in the housing we need, invests in the education we need, invests in opportunities for everybody within our society. So our political movement is about bringing people together, is about empowering people, is about the cultural values that we also bring together. So next week in Edinburgh, we're going to be doing a meeting and a discussion about culture and values in our society. Not because I think art and theatre and music and drama and poetry and painting should be for the elite, for those that can afford it. I think there is a poet, a painting, a novel, a play in all of us. Let's bring it out in our children. Bring it out in our opportunity. And so it's a concept. It's a concept of the policies we put forward. It's a concept about the democracy of the kind of society we want to live in. So, it's an election for one position in the Labour Party. But at another level, it's about how we do politics. It's about how we develop our thinking, our thought process, how we develop our society, how we empower people so they don't have to bow down before the rich and the powerful, that their voice matters and they do have real control over their own lives and their own communities. That surely is what this is all about. So, to aggregate together those people that have stood bravely in the past to give us the rights that we have, those that have stood against cuts in disability payments, those that have stood in cuts to the housing programme, those that have stood up against austerity and emboldened an awful lot of other people to stand up, to those unions that have stood up when the government has come calling for their jobs and their services. And we value each other, and when we come together, we are very, very strong. So surely our watchword is simply this: we want to create a society in a world of peace and justice and human rights not war, exploitation, and the destruction of the world's environment. In our strength, we want to create a society where no one, no area, no community is ever left behind. These are exciting times in politics, on both sides of the Atlantic, all over Europe, and indeed all over the world, as people challenge the whole neoliberal agenda which was foisted on us in the 70s and 80s, and say there is no future in saying to the next generation, sorry, you're going to be poorer than we were, and I really fear for your grandchildren, they're going to be even worse than you are. Goodness knows what's going to happen to your great-grandchildren. Surely, in a world of such riches, in a world of such technology, in a world of such opportunity, we can develop the politics that redistributes the wealth.